And so today I thought we did our kind of wash exercises last week. And oh my gosh. And so today I thought we would work on painting a wash, but doing a sky with it. So we'd actually create something. I practice skies all the time. So I think it's I know a lot of you guys have done this exercise before, but it's something I do quite a bit. And I always end up turning, I'll show you guys one. I always end up turning, I don't know, can you guys see that all right? If not, I'll just pass it around. But I always end up turning those sort of practice things into some sort of a landscape. That's not as clear as I'd like it, so I'm just going to pass it around. So that started off just as a sky. Normally I don't paint skies first. I generally paint a sky last, but in this case, I was just practicing the wow, that's
why did you paint the sky last?
Partially because I don't want the sky to dictate how my painting, the feeling of my painting. So if I have a tendency to skew my skies towards kind of stormy skies, but I paint a lot of really bright, kind of, I don't want the sky to dictate necessarily how the the sort of feeling and what's the word I'm looking for?
Is this something you saw?
No. I took the I'll show you guys. Well, yes and no. I shouldn't say no. That's burnt sienna. I probably won't use that today. I can't get it open.
Michael,
yeah.
The reason why you're having a hard time with this one side, it's twisted.
Oh.
The other side.
Thank you. I'm like, why does this keep popping up on me? Yeah. So annoying. I was like, oh, I was like, really ticked off about it. Oh, so what it is I've taken things that I've seen. So I've seen that, that kind of low bluff or low mountainish shape. And I've seen dirt roads like that. And so I've taken that conglomeration of different locations that I've seen, and I've combined things to make that, which generally a lot of my paintings are. Most of the time when we're working in this class, we're going to work from just one photo, that we kind of deal with because that can get a little confusing. But in this case, we're just going to worry about the sky, and then later on we can go back in if we have time. I'm running so late today. Hopefully we do. We can talk about putting some sort of foreground thing. I didn't bring it with me, but there was another sky I did, and actually I did it in class. And for some reason it felt kind of like the Bahamas or Hawaii or, some sort of island kind of thing. And I ended up taking some ideas I'd seen, some photos I'd seen of a kind of an island with a boat moored in a little kind of lagoon almost thing. And I did the painting. It's a completely kind of made up place. I mean, it's a combination of, I found the sailboat somewhere, and then I found this kind of island shape somewhere. And so I took I took that sky. I just had that kind of ocean feeling, and I thought, okay, well, that's what this is going to be. so it allows you to kind of do a sky and then think, okay, well, now what can I, normally I work the other way, like I've said, but it's because I planned out the subject matter ahead of time. In this case, I just want to concentrate on the sky. The sky is really the interesting thing to me. In other paintings, the sky is just a secondary thing to kind of ground things. So it's not as important. So it comes last because then I can kind of make it match the rest of the painting.
So this one isn't a daytime. What would you do differently if it were night, if it were evening time or nighttime?
You know, that's a good question. You do have good questions. So, oh yeah. You've taken
lots of sky pictures.
Yeah.
Sky.
You know, it would be very similar, but all the colors would be much more muted. So I might even start out, if I could change this to a night image simply by putting some light washes of blue over everything. And that would change this to an evening or night scene where you know the moon is casting these shadows. And that's really the difference. I would just mute everything down. I probably paint it the exact same way I painted this one. But then I would mute everything down with a wash on top of it. And that would be, it kind of acts, you know, when you watch those old movies where they obviously shot the scene during the day, but then they have some sort of filter over the camera, and it makes it feel like it's nighttime.
So one was the other day.
So yeah, it's kind of like that. You could kind of tell, oh, that was shot probably at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but they put a filter on it, and so that kind of acts as that filter. So I could take wow, some of these got broken up in the interim where I didn't use them. I could take royal blue. I might start with, well, actually I might do a wash of royal blue over that, and just a really thin watery wash. So whatever, if you've got a darker blue, it could be like an ultramarine blue or an Antwerp blue. That would be a good one, or Prussian blue. Why can't I think of? You guys all got an email saying class was on, right?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't,
Oh, well.
but I followed by.
Oh, okay. I wonder if Connie. Wait, no. Who am I thinking of?
I kept looking all day.
What's her name? Why did I just forget it? That was sitting next to you last week?
You would have to ask me that one.
I'm sorry. It takes me a minute to learn everybody's name. Huh. Well, it doesn't matter. I wonder if she got a call. I'll make sure. I'll double check and make sure so she knows that we have a class. Okay, what was I talking about?
Skies.
Skies.
Yeah, skies.
You're like, thanks, that's real helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
We had Sunday, we went on a 4-wheel ATV ride up in the canyons.
Oh yeah, but that was fun.
Beautiful red, purple sky
Oh yeah.
with some yellow and orange coming through. I mean, it was spectacular. And neither one of us had had our phones.
Didn't, oh, yeah,
So
wow.
We're like, come on, give me your phone, because you have enough cloud features. You still gave it to me.
Um,
What I think we should
I probably have enough cloud and sky photos myself, but I still always stop, especially on my drive back from Gallup, if it's particularly, sometimes I post those on Facebook, and then sometimes I just keep, oh, wow, look at that.
That's our barn.
Yeah,
That's the cloud we should do.
that is pretty amazing.
Hey, can you see it?
Can
Not
you?
very good. But it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Okay. Got enough water? Yeah. So I spend a lot of time, and I recommend doing this. I spend a lot of time looking at the sky. Look at, boy, that got wet. That was last week's thing. I put this in. Of course, here in the next couple of weeks, I'll probably have to change my password for the college because I've had it for too long. Okay, see that? Yeah. Hopefully this is, if you end up not being able to see, you're welcome to come up here and watch. But I thought this might be easier for everybody. Let's see. Let's move this over there so I have room for. I need to wash these. I should just wash these out. It's fairly clean. It doesn't look like it, but it is. Okay. That's pretty clean. That's okay. Brushes, that's what I need. Water. Brushes. Great. Okay, so those over there. Yeah, I really need to get here at like 5:30, maybe even 5. That may be my new goal on Thursdays, get here at 5, because that took too long. All right, so when painting skies, now I have this kind of in the middle of my board. It doesn't really matter. I generally paint skies upside down to begin with. I know I've talked about that before, mostly because it keeps everything away from, it keeps water and paint from flowing over whatever I've already painted. So if let's say I had painted this bit first, I would then flip this over and get all of this wet, and then start working on the sky. In our case, it doesn't really matter, except I'm going to still work kind of upside down because I want to kind of keep this clean up here. I don't know what I'm going to do with this bottom part yet. What I'm going to do though, to kind of make this easier on myself, I'm going to draw just a really thin, light pencil line about 1/3 of the way down. So I know that somewhere in there is where I'll stop my it's still warm. It's just me though. I know it's not warm in here. I know it's actually quite comfortable.
If you're doing upside down like that,
Let me help you.
and you use about a third of that, are you always going to use a third for the top?
No, this is only because my sky is what's gonna be more, I feel like a pharaoh. Um, um, in this case, the sky, right? In this case, the sky is what's more important than anything else. This is the subject that we're painting. So in this case, it would be 2/3 or so of the paint. I mean, it could be even a little more, but I'm going to give myself about 2/3. Now, it could end up that I paint. It could end up that I paint. I don't know if you can see that line up there, but it could end up that I do something like what I did here, where I pull this up. This, the sky was painted actually all the way down to about where those trees are. I kind of painted around where I thought maybe some trees would be. So I didn't paint all of it, but they were kind of painted, it was kind of painted down in there really lightly. And actually, this may not be the best example. I probably actually only painted the sky to about there, and then I went back in and lift. Sorry, you can't see that.
Are you good?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Here's what I'll do. I'll put it up here. So I probably, this is really, I forget that I have this technology. I really probably only painted the sky to about there where my finger is. And then I came in later and worked it in after I decided I wanted to do something there. I have other ones where like the one I was talking about where it's an ocean, island kind of thing, where, I mean, it was vertical as well. It was this, it was a portrait, but I ended up painting almost all the way down to the bottom of the page. So there was maybe like 1/8 of the page left. And then I went back in because most of the stuff in front of the sky was darker. And so that's kind of think about that. Oh, well, I may end up putting some sort of, thing that's dark. So I'm just kind of picking, I kind of randomly pick about 1/3. That actually may even be closer to 1/4. Well, it's not quite, but it's roughly 1/3 or so of the page. It's just because the sky is what we're going to concentrate on. If it's something else where we're painting a landscape, whether it's a landscape or a building or something, the sky may only be like a little tiny portion of the whole painting. And so I don't deal, that's another reason I paint it last, because if the sky is just like a little tiny bit of the whole, then I don't have to, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. And I have a tendency to spend a lot of time on skies if I paint them first. If you look at a lot of my early work, I put a lot of time in the skies, and then I was like, oh, well, that's sort of drawing your attention away from what's really important. So the only time I do this is when I'm just painting, that's the focus. I'm going to do, I'll end up doing something probably very similar to this. When
in that picture right there, where's the attention going? What do you think the attention?
Well, so in my mind, it kind of comes in like this and then pulls you up into here. That's this road kind of leads you through and up into here. That's where I want you to look at. I want you to look at those clouds.
I don't notice the road, but I notice the sky.
Yeah, this is like a secondary kind of thing. It's not very important. The sky is really what you're drawn to, and that's really what I want people to pay attention to. So, without further ado, I got a little drop of red. Apparently, I hadn't cleaned this brush out very well. So I'm just going to put water over this whole thing, and if I use this 1-inch brush. If I'm doing a larger painting, this is a good spot to use my 2-inch brush.
Use a brush?
A 2-inch brush, this wider one. A lot of times this one only gets used when I'm painting really large paintings and I'm just painting the sky. I use it to put water on.
What paint are we using?
We'll start with blues. So peacock blue or something close to that. Cobalt blue. What is it?
Put a lot of water, or you just put a little bit of water?
No, it's a fair amount. You're welcome to come up and look if you want. It's you know, if I put it on there, you can see it's dripping off. So it's a fair amount of water. I just dripped it.
Take a shower in this one.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Right.
put it and I'll put even a little bit more on there before I oops, let's get that kind of back in there. So I like it really wet because I'm going to use this patent pending toilet paper cloud maker that I've got here. Yeah. That's right.
So I went to the pharmacy right after, not too long after COVID. And I was waiting to be helped, and this man said, what did he say? You know why there's a shortage of toilet paper? And I'm like, no. He said, well, one person sneezed and everybody crept their pants. I was like, oh, well, that's not what he said, but.
Yeah, he said something slightly racier. So that's pretty wet. I mean, you can see I've got some nice puddles on there. Push that up and I even wet it a little further past where my line is. And I'm going to use a little peacock blue. I like to start with peacock blue. So I'm going to make a nice little, I'll bring this over here so you can see what I'm doing. I've got this peacock blue. Well, can't see it on the palette, but you can see, I'm just making a nice little puddle of peacock blue here. I probably could have done that first, but it doesn't matter. That's going to be the first kind of blue. Now, if you don't have peacock blue,
You using the same brush?
yeah, same brush. You could use cobalt blue, which is a nice bright blue. You could even use something like a royal blue or Antwerp blue or something that's a little darker. I just like to start with a little. I like to start with something brighter. Even ultramarine blue would be a good one. So if you don't have peacock, like a cobalt blue is really kind of a nice bright blue when you make this kind of watery wash. And so I'll do this and then we'll so you don't necessarily have to be doing this while I'm doing it, but you can just watch and then but if you've done this before, you know what I'm doing too. So so then I'm just going to start putting paint on my paper, and because I don't really have any idea where things are going to go, I'm just going to kind of get a little more water. I'm just going to kind of spread this blue across using my big brush across the paper. As I get up here, what I might do is just add a little more water. It's okay if it
Is there any wrong way to do this?
nope. That's the great thing about this technique. There's not really a wrong way to.
Whoever says, oh, that's interesting.
There
Right?
you go.
So I've got some nice paint on there. That does not look like peacock blue on the screen, does it?
No, it doesn't.
That looks like
I
a.
was thinking I had it wrong.
That looks like cobalt blue almost. All right, I'm just going to push some of this back up into here, and then what I'm going to do real quick is squeeze my brush out. I have a whole slew of paint that is running down here. So I'm just going to pick up some of this excess water before it becomes a problem. And I stick my hand in it. I can just wipe up a lot of this around here, but whoops. I'm just going to get some of this excess. So because this is so wet, I can kind of spend a little bit of time doing this. Look at that other. Oh, this one's too wet. I'll have to let that one dry out. I like that one better because that one doesn't have a pattern. This one has this ridged pattern. But this is almost out, so we'll just use this. Both of them are almost out. I've got another roll at the studio that I was going to bring with me, and I forgot. So I'm going to take this kind of, and if you need Kleenex, Kleenex works just the same, as long as it's not anything with lotion, which that does not have lotion. So you can use toilet paper, you can use Kleenex.
So you can't use lotion, huh?
Yeah, you don't want lotion in your Kleenex. Do you have lotion in your Kleenex? Oh, sorry. The reason is because the lotion, it's great on your nose, but it's not great on watercolor. So just take a whole slew of it. And,
All right, thanks.
yeah. And what you're going to do, what it does is it leaves a residue on the paper, and then you can't paint there. So what you're going to do is kind of make this kind of a shape. So it's kind of a cloud shape. What you don't want to do is take it and make a little tiny dot of a ball. You don't want to do this with it. So you want to take it and you want to kind of spread it out and make kind of a wide cloud-ish sort of shape. And then you're just going to randomly, where you feel like it, plop it down on the paper. So you don't want to blot it. You just want to kind of plop it down. And you can see I lifted a whole lot. And then I'm going to rotate my paper. And then I'm going to plop it down again. And maybe put a cloud there. And this is kind of why I don't like this particular brand of toilet paper that I'm using here. It was cheap, but I didn't realize there were lines in it. But that's all right. It won't be a big deal.
That's rain coming down.
Yeah. It's just got a texture that I don't really care for. And this roll that doesn't is it's all wet. What I may do is just grab a couple of Kleenex too. Yeah. So let's see if I can. Yeah, it's dried a little too much for me, but that's all right. So I've got some kind of interesting cloud shape, and what I'm doing is I'm rotating, and I'm not pushing used Kleenex or toilet paper back down because that'll push paint into your paper. So I'm kind of rotating it and finding a clean spot, and then I'll push it down again. If I don't like that shape, I can come in from a different angle and do something. I mean, I haven't really done anything special there. This sky isn't the best so far, but just because it's not the best to begin with doesn't mean it won't turn out to be decent later. So real quickly, I'm gonna sop up some of this extra water that I've got down here along the edge. I'm just gonna use my toilet paper blob here just to get a little extra up. You could use a thirsty brush like I did before. And I've started putting this towel here because I have a tendency to paint and it all drips into my lap. So that's what I've started using this towel for. Okay, so I have this, you can kind of see it. I've got these kind of interesting shapes. Interesting I might be running fast and loose with that word, but I have these lighter shapes on my paper. And I'm going to switch to, I could continue to use the flat brush, but I'm going to switch. It's a little easier with a round brush. So I'm going to switch to my number 8 round. And I'm going to still use that same blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now find some areas. Oops, that I did not get wet. There, I'm going to find some some areas. I'm going to continue with this blue. Remember to roll. Remember when you I'll come back over here. You know, you're mixing your paint and whatnot, and you're abusing your brush. You don't get a nice point. So remember to kind of roll that brush as you pick it up. So you have a nice.
Still doing the blue?
Yeah, still using the same blue. So I've got a nice bit of blue. And now I'm going to look at this and say, okay, what parts of these shapes do I like? What parts do I not like? And we're just going to deal with the top. So the closest bit to you right now. So I'm going to, I kind of like this shape here. It's a little hard to see up on the screen. I apologize for that, but I'm going to kind of come in and I'm now going to accentuate part of this shape. And you'll notice, like, even though this paper is pretty damp, it's not damp enough for the paint to go back into that lighter area. You've picked up enough moisture out of that to where, for the most part, where that you can get a pretty sharp edge. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of this because I don't want to outline the whole cloud. We don't want if we, we don't want a cloud where we do this kind of thing. We don't want a symbol for a cloud, because we can all paint clouds like that. I can paint those all day long. But that's not what we're going for here.
So we're going to outline it and then color it in.
Well, no, we're not really outlining. We're just painting like around just so I'm gonna so I've put this in here, this darker bit, and I pulled it away from the white. So I've made this whole section here darker. And then I'm gonna come down. I'm gonna leave that next little bulb right here that's lighter. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm not gonna put any more paint there right now, because I want a lost edge. If you look at clouds, you'll see sharp edges, and then you'll see edges that kind of blend into the sky behind it. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna go, okay, well, I'm gonna put a little bit here, maybe. And the cool thing about this is if at any point you feel like you've done something you don't like, you can undo it.
How do you undo it?
You lift it with your Kleenex again.
You cry over it and use the tears to.
You add more water and you add more water and
I might go for your grandkids.
she's pulling your leg there. So you could just see, I just picked some up where it was still wet. I just cleaned my brush out and I came in here and I just picked that bit up right there with my brush right in here.
I'm so wet.
That's okay.
A surprise.
Nope.
That's how I rock and roll.
So then I'm going to come down in here. I want to add a little more, I think, over in here. This is so wet that may smooth out or fuse out into it, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. So then I'm just going to kind of think about, okay, I like that. And don't worry if you get streaks and stuff like this. This should be wet enough to where if you do get streaks, they'll kind of fuse, they'll kind of blend out by themselves. If they don't, we can go back in later. So you can see I'm just picking areas where I've added more paint to enhance that shape. And then I've got areas where I've left it alone so that the viewer can make up their mind that the cloud shape continues there. So it's called lost and found edges. Here I've got a shape that kind of fuses out into there. So I'm going to finish up a little bit here, and then I'll come look at everybody's and we'll talk about that. Yours is extra interesting.
I am just a brat today. My husband said, "Oh, you are on one." And my response was, "Well." I was.
So yeah, so you can see I've kind of left some areas. Maybe I feel like this is a little too sharp, this edge right here next to where it's coming off towards the edge of the paper. So I want to soften that over here maybe a little bit. I want that edge to be kind of soft as it gets close to the edge, because maybe that needs to be softened a bit too. Maybe I've got too much there. So just kind of coming in, softening some of this. I can add more paint, but it'll still be a soft edge simply by adding a little more water and letting it run down in there. Maybe I soften that edge. Maybe that needs to be softened a little bit. There we go. I don't know that I like that shape, so I'm just going to kind of fix it a little bit. And then if I don't like it still, I can wait till it dries and I can lift parts out and I can massage it. I can even come back in with a little more of my Kleenex and use some clean areas to kind of pick up some yeah. I felt like I got that a little too sharp on the edge there, so let's soften that a little bit. So when you get to a certain point, it should look, something like this. Obviously, it's going to look different because we're all, none of us are going to have the same exact painting, because that's the beauty of watercolor. It's all, in oil or acrylic, you can match a person's, technique stroke for stroke, and you can actually paint a copy of someone's work. In watercolor, it is impossible to do that. So, but you should have something that somewhat resembles, something like this. And yeah, just make sure you've got little areas where you've softened it back out so it's not completely. You can see I have some sharp edges and then I have some really soft edges. Sharp edges, a really soft edge. Really soft edge over here. You don't need to start over. Just because it doesn't look good right now doesn't mean it won't later.
Well, it kind of does sometimes.
Yeah, so what you could do now is add a little more water to some spots here. Yeah, here I'll show you. That was pretty close, but like you can come in and just soften some of that line. Just soften it up like that, and then you can take your Kleenex and just kind of get that up. And that may have been too much that I picked up, but now you can go back in and kind of, yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so, because you want some of it to be soft, you want some of it to be hard, a sharp edge.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it looks like anything.
Well, that's only because you have a series of disconnected shapes here. So if you, can I borrow that? And you come in here and maybe connect this up in here. Connect that
Okay.
whole thing. Just connect that. And then maybe we'll lift some of this. I mean, because you've got a really interesting shape right there. We'll lift some of this out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all right, because it's just a slightly darker area on the cloud. So we'll kind of, we want some of these shapes to be connected,
Okay.
but we want some of them, you just want softer edges. So you did really good on softening the edges, but then you softened it all the way out to the. So you see how I'm just kind of connecting that,
Right.
but you see how you left this. Like you left that soft and that was good. I kind of added a little more dark, so I need to add maybe a little more water and kind of pick some of that up. Whether it's with the Kleenex or toilet paper or with your brush, just rolling it. See how that's starting to look like a series of clouds. That's a nice cloud shape. What you could do, you have this nice dark, and that's good. Let's just spread it out a little bit, because maybe that's a shadowy area of the cloud. Because that's a really nice shape. These three little shapes are kind of very similar. Pull this down here. Now. Just kind of change those shapes just a little bit, and then this. Now they're still very similar, and then what I do is kind of come in here and lift some of that back out, so this becomes one shape. So there you have nice.
Now it's all joined together. That's right.
Yeah.
Notice that's what was missing.
Yeah, what happens is they get a little disjointed and you're like, well, I just have these little blotchy things and it doesn't look like anything.
Right.
But just by simply just connecting it a little bit, and that may be, I don't know, I kind of like that little blob of light there, but it was so close to the edge of the paper, it's probably not a good place to have it, so we'll just get rid of that. And then, but yeah, so that's, oh. You still got that nice little shadowy area,
Right.
but we kind of get rid of that line.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
That-
yeah, just by connecting those shapes, you end up with this nice cloud shape. And we can further divide it into separate clouds, and we will. Like right now, mine looks like just one big cloud, but the way I'm looking at it, there might be three there
Right, exactly.
or something. So.
Okay.
So yeah, we kind of, and even mine, like I'm thinking, I've got a lot of light coming down all the way to the edge of the paper, but I'm looking at, stepping back from it. I'm thinking I need to darken some of that without, putting a sharp line. I just need to add a little bit of darker against the edge of the paper, because those start pulling your eye off of the page. Yeah, so even mine, I'm gonna go back in and add, kind of connect those up a little bit. I've got a little bit of that same thing going on.
Now, where is that, where it would pull your eye off of it?
So these areas here, where it's really light, that is a way for the viewer to escape your painting, and you don't want that. You want people being trapped there. So same with here and there. So what I'll do, and I can show you that real quick. What I'll do is I'll just come in with a little more paint down in here. And I don't want to get too close to this really nice soft edge that I've got here and here. So I'm just coming in and adding a little bit more paint down here closer to the edge of the paper. So I put that in and I kind of connect those shapes a little bit better. Don't want to mess that up too much because I like that soft edge. But I'm adding a little bit of paint in some of these areas so it's soft and it kind of blurs, but it doesn't blur all the way off the page. Because the trick is, and this sounds diabolical when it's not really, but you want to trap your viewer in your painting. You want them to stay there and look at it and continue to look at it and discover things about it. So that's one of the reasons you want these soft lost edges, because that engages their imagination. So they complete that shape in their head. They see it as a shape, but it's really just a suggestion of a shape. But they get to tell part of the story. And so that makes your painting more interesting because they get to tell part of the story in their head. They don't know that they're doing that, but that's what they're doing.
Scratches
On your paper?
on my paper. I don't know how that.
Let me look at it real quick and
Emily did it while I was.
So there I've kind of fixed that issue a little bit. Where it's still, I've got those nice soft edges, but I can even come in here with a little bit of Kleenex and soften them even more if I want. In a couple spots where I've added. I can even soften, where I've made it darker down in here, I can come in here and soften this edge and pull more of that, some of that dark down in there. Maybe that's where I end up dividing some of these cloud shapes. But I don't want to get too far into that before I'm going to now, I feel like I've got enough kind of to look at this right side up now. Let me just move that over a little bit. There we go. I think we've got enough where we can, I'll wait.
Looks a whole lot different.
Yeah, it does. It does look a lot different. And you'll notice things that maybe you don't like. You'll notice things that maybe you do like. I'm looking at this and I'm not super crazy about this spot on mine right here. But I'm going to leave it alone for now because, well, actually I'm not. I'm going to come in and just soften that little spot. There's a line right here. There's a line right there that I don't like. Yeah. I'm just lifting that little bit of a line out of there. It's still there, but it's not as noticeable up here, but I can see it pretty clearly. But I'm going to leave it alone. And now I want to think about kind of the bottom of the clouds. I want to kind of think about how the bottom of these clouds look. So I know I've got kind of a cloud right here, and this may be actually a couple of clouds there. This one may come down in, looking at this, I've got this one coming kind of down here like this. I feel like a weatherman. I'm trying to point and look at the kind of down in there. Maybe this one's peeking out. That's another one behind there. because I've got this little bit of dark right here. I can accentuate that and make two different clouds. And now I have depth in my painting. Right now it's fairly flat looking, but by doing that, I'll have depth. So I have, all I'm doing is just kind of looking at this and going, could that be this? Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm crazy about what happened here with this line. I'm going to see if I can't, and if I can't lift it up, it's not a big deal. But you know, this is another cloud over here. So maybe I have like this cloud that kind of comes down like this. And I've got this kind of wacky, I don't know what's going on with that cloud. It's, I'm kind of, you know, I've got kind of one of those streaky clouds like we had over there on yours. So I've got that kind of thing going there. So this is a cloud. Maybe there's another little one that's coming in here somehow. I don't know yet. I haven't gotten to that, but I definitely know that I have this shape here. So I kind of want to, this is kind of solidified in my head that this is kind of a cloud shape here. So I'm not going to worry about the one in the back. I'm going to start here with this one, and I'm going to pick a little bit of, I want a slightly grayer blue. If you don't have a grayer blue, you could use, like I have this, I'll show you, I have this dioxazine violet. Well, that's not a good place to mix it. Let me put it here. So this is a nice violet. I could take this and mix it with a little of my, so I have this nice violet. I can take it and mix it with my peacock blue or cobalt blue, whatever you're using. And then I can grab a little of my dark green, which in my case is hooker's green, but if you don't have hooker's green, that's okay. And you can add in a little of that, and you'll notice that I now have a gray. And if it's a little too gray, maybe I want it to be a little brighter blue, you know, or a little more on the blue, I can add more blue, but you can see that I have grayed down that peacock blue just by adding a little violet and a little bit of green. So if you're using cobalt blue, it'd be the same, you know, just grab a little violet and a little green. It doesn't take a lot to do it, just a little bit, but you can see I've got that nice kind of gray. Now it looks more gray. That looks very Payne's gray up on screen. It does not look like that at all down here on my palette. It's more of a kind of a darker peacock blue. If I wanted to, you know, so yeah, you can see it's not quite as
Okay.
dark. Unfortunately, the color on these things is not the, I've noticed, you know, they're great. They're great, you know, it's great to have this projector, but the color is a little off. Even if you look at the computer monitor, it's not quite, it looks a little bit darker than it really is. But but you don't necessarily have to do that. If you have a darker blue, let's say you have maybe Antwerp blue, which is, can you see? Yeah, you can see I have Antwerp blue. That's very similar. I could use Antwerp blue, or even royal blue is going to be nice. Whatever you know, even a little indigo. If you had indigo, that would be very similar. Oh, I put a lot of water in that. What was I thinking? Oh, that's not indigo. That's Maya blue. That's what that is. What is this? Is indigo right here. I also put a lot of water into that. So, you know, a little indigo. If you have indigo, that would be a good one to use as well. It's a nice. But if you don't have that dark blue, a really great way to get something similar is to take whatever blue you're using and mix in a little violet and a little hooker's green or dark green, whatever green you have. Even sap green would work. And you'll get that nice gray. This is the one I mixed right here.
Look at how nice and light it is.
Yeah, I mean, I could make it darker. I could add a little more violet and a little more green. But I am using peacock blue to do it, so it's going to be, it's still going to be fairly light. So, on screen it looks, positively like peacock, or I mean like Payne's gray, but I actually kind of like that. I'm going to use that mix. But like if you have indigo or something, that makes your life a lot easier. Whoa. See, this is where I need it level because I wonder if nah, that's not gonna work. I'll just not worry about it. Ooh. Oh. Problem solved. So what I'm going to do now, I have these kind of fluffy clouds. I need to come in. I need to kind of make a base to these clouds. I need to kind of have, in not all clouds do this, but the ones that I'm thinking of kind of have a flat bottom. They kind of look like they have a flat bottom to them. So I'm just going to come in, and you can see how I'm holding my brush. I'm holding it sideways. So I'm just going to hold it, and it, lefty, you'll just work with your other hand. You'll just hold it like this. But I'm going to come in, and I'm going to just kind of, you're going to watch me do this. I'm going to move it without touching the paper first, because I'm just sort of practicing the motion I'm thinking about. But then I'm going to just kind of come in here, and I'm like, okay, well, I've got this little bit of sweeping where it kind of curves back up, but this is going to be, kind of the bottom of my cloud. And then I'm kind of dry brushing it a little bit. At first, you can see I'm just kind of pulling that in. That can kind of come along like that. If I want, now, obviously, that's a little dark. Even in real life, it's where it's not as dark as that. It's a little dark. So I'll clean my brush out. Now I've got water. This is still wet, even though I was kind of dry brushing it on there. And I can come in here and I can take spots where I pull that back up and soften that again. So it makes it fluffy. And I'm still holding my brush sideways like this.
You still hold an 8?
Yeah, I'm still using my 8. You don't necessarily have to if you don't. You can use a smaller one or a bigger one for that matter. I'm just using this one because that needs a little more color in there. I let that dry just a bit. So I'm holding this sideways, and mostly it's clean. I'm just cleaning my brush out, and then I'm coming in, and I'm like, okay, I want a little bit coming back up like that. I don't want this. This isn't going to stay, that sharp a line. I'm going to come back in and soften that. I like you guys may be wondering why I'm turning around and looking at this, even though the color's not accurate. It's so I can look at the shape from a distance. So this beats standing up and I can look at it from a distance and go, okay, do I like that shape? Do I like what's going on there? I kind of do, and I kind of don't. So I'm going to pull that up, and really I'm just kind of using the side of my brush. I'll clean it out periodically, but you can see I'm adding weight to the bottom of this. Maybe I'll come in with a little bit more. Now I'll change it up a little bit and drop some in with my brush, holding it kind of normal. You can stand on this side, Melanie, if you want.
I'll just walk, Kathy.
No, I mean, if you stood over here by the door, you.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
That's
Wasn't
weird.
being rude. It's
So I'm kind of sculpting this as I go. Now, do I like that perfectly flat? Not really. This may end up, I'm not too worried about that, but I'm just softening this. I'll pull some of it down and then soften it down here. But I've added that dark weight to the bottom of the cloud. Maybe that's a little bit too much that I've got going there. That could end up, oops, that's wadded up toilet paper. You don't want that. So I've added weight to the bottom of that. This is, I think, a little sharp. It needs to kind of come up in here a little bit more. And so what I'll do is I'll soften that with water, and then I can just kind of pull it up with the stroke of my brush. Again, using the side of my brush, and I'm just kind of pulling that up and making a secondary kind of shadowy area up in here where that cloud maybe is billowing down a little bit, but you can see it's nice and soft. Actually, over on the screen, it's a little hard to see that I've done that, which is weird. But there I've got a, yeah, boy, you can't even hardly, I think it's because it's wet and it's got a glare on it. As soon as that dries, it'll show up a little better. And then, so I have this other shape. I want to come back in. I want to kind of make this cloud look like it's sticking out from behind. Now yours may not be the same shape. It may be a slightly different cloud that you see poking from behind, but now I'm kind of going, okay, well, how do I want that? So I'm going to make another sharp edge, but then I also want some lost edges. So I want that edge to be lost. So I have this kind of, I don't like that shape. That was weird. So I'm just kind of coming in with that, that dark gray blue a little bit. And now that one looks like it's actually kind of a green blue, gray green blue, which is kind of interesting. Now that looks like I have that secondary cloud kind of poking, and it looks way darker on screen than up on the screen than it does in person here. But this, at least you can kind of see it. So don't make it quite as dark as what it looks like on screen. Make it about 50% of that, because that's probably what I've got going on. So there, I've got that cloud. And then down in here, maybe it softens again. So it's a little soft right here. But you can see that it does, and I'm not super thrilled with that shape right there. So I want to kind of come up and kind of change that. I didn't notice that until just now that I didn't like that. It's kind of weird. So that I just grabbed a little peacock blue again and fixed that little spot there. And then I don't like this shape either, so I'm just going to soften it. And if you think about it, if you think about these little areas up here, this is just like a little tiny bit of the cloud that's sticking up past another cloud that's in front of it, and the sun is hitting it, so it's super bright. That's what that little spot is. So I'll just add a little dark right there. Yeah, that's working. So now I've made, I've got the base of this larger cloud that's in front. I have a little secondary area that's a little darker, that's in shadow. And then I've made this cloud that's back in here. Now I can see a line forming that I don't like, so I'm going to come back in and soften that. But I've made this secondary cloud that's peeking up behind this cloud in front, all from just that one shape. Do I like that? I don't know, but I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna wait till that dries to deal with it. But yeah, so now I've got that, this cloud that's peeking up out from behind. And it could be the same cloud. It's just, you know, it's rolled over and then it pops back up and, you know, I mean, who knows? Clouds are. Clouds do all sorts of crazy things. And so I need to do the same over here. Maybe this cloud is a little higher. So I'm going to come back in with that dark that I mixed. So let me mix a little bit more because I'm kind of almost out of it. Add a little green, a little of this dioxazine violet. Normally I probably wouldn't use that. Normally I'd probably be using quinacridone violet, but this was just a faster, because I like it a little bit better than the dioxazine violet, but are you having trouble?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't believe you. So let me just I'll come back around and help you guys again. So don't.
This is a fright factory over here.
That's okay. That's okay. This, you know, all we're doing here is just playing around and we're practicing. So I'm going to come in. I kind of like this kind of shape where the cloud's coming up this way and up that way. So I kind of feel like maybe this cloud is still going to be, maybe I've got another cloud that's kind of in here somewhere. So I'm gonna come in. I'm kind of, I'll go between holding my brush kind of like this and holding it normal and holding it sideways like this. So I kind of go back and forth. Are you yawning over there?
No, I'm sighing.
Oh. I thought I was boring you. Okay, so I'm just kind of pulling that in, and I'm making this up. I mean, that looks a little too dark on screen. It's way darker than it actually is, but that's all right. I don't know that I like that shape so sharp, so I'll come back in, and I could use the toilet paper or Kleenexes again. Or I can just do this with my brush. I think it's going to be a combination of the two, though. And I can pick up a little bit where I maybe put down a little bit too much. I can pick some of that back up, and then I can come back in here and go, okay, I like it, but I didn't like that shape. So we'll just kind of pull that in. Maybe like so. I don't know that I like this cloud just not ending. I don't like how it's just going because it's too much. I want to kind of break it up a little bit. So I'm just going to pull some of this dark down in there, but really softly like that. So you can see I put it in, and then I came back in with a clean brush and I kind of lightened it quite a bit. And then I wipe my brush off and I go back in with a kind of a thirsty brush and I pick some of it back up. So it divides that, but not totally. Let's see. Then I'll come in. Are you having fun at least? Oh. So there's this kind of cloud coming up. I don't necessarily need to decide where my light source is coming from necessarily, but I I'm kind of thinking it's coming from the left side of my paper. I don't know why, it just sort of worked out that way. But so I've got that kind of coming up in there, and then this is going to have a little bit of a bottom to it as well over here. And this can just be, I can just kind of come in and kind of paint these kind of little swoopy shapes with the side of my brush. If it's too much, I can come and lift it back out. I can push my brush, which is kind of hard on it, but it's still, you know, if it's a decent brush, it should be all right. And sometimes you get really cool marks by pushing your brush, and you know, you get those hairs that kind of go backwards a little bit. Let's see, I don't care for, I just don't like this shape that I've created here. So I'm just going to get rid of it by lifting that back out. Luckily, it's still pretty wet, so I can just come back in and lift that up. I don't like that shape at all either. But now I kind of like it. And so I'm just kind of pulling in a little. Yeah, this isn't looking terrible. I don't know if it's looking good yet, but it's not looking terrible. Yeah, so that's now. So like now I technically, and this could be, you know, I could stop here and I can come up with something. You know, this could be the finished sky. I could stop here and I'd be happy with this, happy-ish. You know, and I could come in and paint whatever I want in the foreground. Or I can continue, you know, I can push it more into a kind of a stormy kind of thing. But so that's that next step, is kind of coming in with the slightly darker. Oops. Can we? No, it goes this way. Can we think backwards? Okay, well, this is where we ended the class last Thursday. So we will be picking this painting up again this next following Thursday. So stay tuned for that. And I hope everybody has a great week. And I look forward to seeing everybody either virtually or in person on Thursday. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Alrighty, bye. The cloud, there we go. Well, magically, we've added some color to these clouds. Once it kind of clicks, and you kind of get this working, clouds are fun and easy, and I don't know, really, it's a great way to add a little drama to your, you know, to your paintings. And really, you know, it's just taken me, it's taking me years to kind of get to where I'm comfortable doing this.
There's no hope for us.
No, there is. It just takes practice. That's what I mean. If you look at skies that I painted on paintings that I sold when I first started selling paintings, I don't like them as much as paintings that I've done now. Now I do like some of them, but I look at them and I go, oh, you know, if I were doing that today, I'd probably do it this way instead of that way. So I kind of like this a little more. Little more naturalistic, kind of impressionistic. I mean, they were almost abstract skies before, so they weren't quite as impressionistic as they are now for me. So it got a weird line there that I'm just softening. Yeah, so now we could think about at this stage, this is a good time to think. I still want to kind of make this really dramatic, this sky really dramatic, but I want to start adding some foreground into this so I can kind of think about how the sky is going to interact with my foreground. So I think what I'm going to do is something fairly simple. I don't want to make this overly complicated, so I'm going to grab my pencil. Let's see. Make sure that area is dry. And I'm going to quickly kind of sketch out maybe like a bluff, maybe a really dark one. So I'm just going to sketch out. So I'm just drawing, I don't know, can you guys see that? Okay. Yeah, I've got a line. You can kind of see that line. So I've got this little bluff kind of thing coming down like so, kind of coming across there. Maybe it jiggers back up and isn't quite as flat at the top. This is going to be really dark, so I'm not too worried about let's see how it really looks, and then maybe I'll put a few little trees, and again, you can kind of see there's not going to be a lot of detail in this. It's just a few little trees. Maybe these trees kind of come up a little higher. We'll kind of have this kind of slight curve, maybe a hill, and then maybe there's another little bluff kind of thing going off that way. Now, my paper's a little wet right there where I drew that, so and then I'll have kind of a road cut through here. So what I'm going to do is kind of bring this in really kind of a flat curve right there, and then we'll kind of have this will come in really wide and be kind of a, let's see, I didn't do that right.
Oh, that's your road?
Yeah, this will be my road right here.
Okay.
So this is going to come in. I think that needs to come up more. It needs to be flatter up here. So it's almost just kind of whoop. And then this, there we go, maybe something like that. So it looks like we're kind of standing in the middle of the road. And then I'll have this kind of hill, and then I'll keep these trees kind of going across like that.
There are no trees in Farmington.
Well, sure there
In
are.
Farmington, yes, outside.
Yeah,
It's your imagination.
I'm making up this. This is a made up.
I know.
Let's see, and I'll bring these. Maybe they kind of come back down below that line of field. Now, do I like that? It's not too bad, but you can see. So what I want to do first is paint these fields. Why don't we, let's see. So do you see how, I just kind of brought that up. Maybe that needs to be a little bit less, what am I trying to say? A little less flat. I don't want to quite, I kind of brought this up, and then maybe it needs to be a little less flat as well. Just coming across there like that. Now, yeah, so the first thing I kind of want to do you guys want to draw this? Can you see that okay? On the thing, I can draw it in a little darker because these are going to be.
Yeah, I think so.
So just kind of pick like this bottom third-ish of your paper, and
there.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'll show you guys. I'm gonna paint my first wash of grass, kind of this field. And I know I'm gonna use some, let's see, I'm gonna use some greens and stuff. I'm gonna have to open more of these up. Might use sap green. Might use permanent. Might use Blizzard Crimson. And permanent magenta. Oh, quinacridone gold. I do like that. I may or may not use that right now. But boy, these all leaked and got really, really squishy. I know that I'm going to use burnt sienna eventually. So I'm going to open that up. Oh, didn't even get water in it. Oh, I don't think I opened a bunch of these up last time. I opened some of them and not the others. That's what happened there.
We mostly did blues.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll. Fingers are sticky. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my flat brush now. If it makes you uncomfortable to use your flat brush, just use a smaller, a larger round. But I'm going to use my flat brush, and I'm going to grab a lot of the similar colors that I was using up here in the clouds. But I'm also going to use some other stuff. So I'm gonna start with my permanent yellow deep. So just if you have just yellow and orange, you could take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of orange and kind of lighten up the orange with it, or just use yellow for that matter. I mean, it'll be fine. And yeah, I know that there's some blue on there, but that's all right. And so I'm just going to do that. Remember the multicolored wash we did on the first day? So I'm going to do a little of that. I'm going to grab a little, what is this, permanent yellow orange. It's just a little darker. And I know it looks like I'm painting a lot of one color. Let's see, let's go in. I'm going to grab a little permanent green #1. So just any light green will do. And I'm just going to drop that in a few spots. Just kind of move that around. And you can see I'm not using a lot of paint. I can even use some of this peacock blue that I have. I could throw a little of that in just for some. I mean, I've already got a little bit in there. Let's go back to, I'm going to grab a little of the opera. Again, this is where maybe just red, really watered down red would be good. Let's just put some of that in there. And it's just, I'm just making kind of a wash. Let's go back to the permanent yellow deep. And then I'm going to come down to this line with that. I'm not going to worry about the road. That's separate. So I'm just filling in this space there. And this is my first wash on this little field, prairie kind of thing. And I'm going to come over. I probably should have started on this side. I don't know why I didn't, but and I'm going to do some similar thing. We've got a little of the permanent yellow orange, or permanent yellow deep, I'm sorry. Maybe a little permanent yellow orange. That's probably too much. So I can come in, really pick some of that back up. It all, the yellow deep and the yellow orange, when you water them down, they both look very similar. Grab a little of that green. Oops, I grabbed some, I guess there was some blue under there. That's okay. Or gray, whatever that gray that I mixed, but it's not going to hurt anything. Let's just grab a little more of that. We'll just put a little more of that in there. I do think I want a little more of this pink. I'm just kind of looking at the way this looks. And I'm thinking, okay, do I want another little bit of the opera there? I don't want that to form an actual line. So I'm just going to pick that. So I added just a bit more of the opera, red, whatever, if you don't have opera, you can use really watered down red. Like really, see, that's my red right there. If I use that, which I can, I'll just add a little, see how watered down that is? And that's, that's just permanent red, I think, that I was using there. Could be Scarlet Lake, though, I don't know. But it's, any of those. So that's my first kind of wash. And you can see it doesn't look like much of anything. It's just a multicolored wash. Like
First wash,
mhm.
indicating going to be another or another.
Yeah, we're going to do another layer on top of this after it dries. So I'm going to come in and just kind of pick some of that excess water up with my thirsty brush. All I'm doing is just squeezing the water out. So it's still damp, but it's going to pick up excess water. So I can just come in and see how it picked up that puddle really nicely. While I'm thinking about it, do I want another little bit of, yeah. So we'll just come in.
So you don't want too much of any one color.
No, I want this to, this is going to look like kind of a field with, it could have some, these colors might be, yeah, wildflower things and stuff. It could be, the yellow could be dead grass. It's turned yellow because it's dry or whatever. And then there's little areas where it's still green and so that's. Let's pick that back up. So if I feel like I need more green, which maybe I do, let me just grab a little hint more. And if you don't have a light green, just take your yellow and your red, your green and mix them together, and you'll get something that's similar. Sometimes this isn't light enough, so I'll add. That's not where I wanted that. I wanted that back up in there. There we go. Just adding a little bit more. And this is very light. It's very, you can see a lot of the paper through it. But that's my first wash, and it's just as light as I can get it. So it's very watery. And then we'll let this dry. So I don't know if and don't worry if you have like little spots where whites, I got a few little spots of white that's left there. That's okay. That just adds to the texture. As it dries, you can add more water and get really cool blossoms.
So my blue's gonna show through.
That is okay. Mine will show through too. So once we get kind of that second layer of wash or glaze over the top of this first glaze, you'll stop to, people won't notice that blue. It'll just look like a unifying color under the whole thing. So now I'm just going to paint in these trees down here. I'm just going to use a small round brush. I'm going to use because these trees are kind of small and there's not a lot of detail. I'm just going to use my number 6 brush, my number 6 round. And I'm going to go in now. Some of you, like I have a fair amount of blue on, down there. So I'm going to get a fair amount of, I'm not going to have the pure color that I normally would. So I'm going to grab a little, let's see, I know I'm going to use a little lemon yellow. Let's grab a little lemon yellow there. Let's make that. There we go. Got a little lemon yellow. I've got a little permanent yellow deep over here. I've got a little permanent yellow orange. Again, if you like, if I wanted to make something similar, I could take my orange and my yellow. So I have this orange here, and I could add a little yellow to that. And you can see it's not going to be as light as that, my permanent yellow deep, but it's pretty close just by. So if you don't have the like permanent yellow deep or something similar, Azo yellow, Indian yellow, then you can take yellow and orange and make a much lighter yellow or orange, I mean. So you can see, I mean, here's the permanent orange right there. And I took a little permanent orange and then added a little of the yellow, and I got some, it's not quite as bright as that. Not quite as brilliant as that, but that's okay. Okay, so let's grab a little of that. Yellow, yellow you can get away with using a little bit more of it than some of the, because it's not as because it's not as dark as, it's a very light color. So what I'm going to do is come in and I've just got a little, this yellow. I'm just going to add a little, and I didn't really wash this brush out very well. So it's really more permanent yellow, it's more that, a little bit of that. So, but that's okay. And, I am painting on top of this blue, but the way I see it, that might be in shadow from clouds and stuff back there anyway. So I'm not too worried about the fact that I have this blue. And I'm just picking out spots where I think, light from the sun would be hitting it. Even though it's in shadow, we'll still have lighter spots. And then now I'll go into this permanent yellow orange and add a little of it. I'm not going to get real dark. I'm just kind of, and I'm going to come, I'm just kind of adding a little bit. I'm going to come down over that line that I created and start to hide it a little bit. So I'm just adding, and really, so I'm just making kind of a fall kind of foliage kind of look. But you can see I'm skipping around a little bit just to add that. And I'm just picking up more. If I feel like I've got too much, I can pick up a little of this. That is, well, it's a little bit lighter than that. So and I can add a little more water to this one, so it's a little lighter in spots.
So the paint, it has still has a lot of water in it.
Yeah.
On the paper.
Yeah, you can see. I mean, it's a pretty good puddle there. So even though it looks kind of dark, it's not going to dry that dark because there's more water than paint in there. And all I'm doing is just kind of putting some of this. There's not going to be. We're not doing a lot of detail in this. I'm going to grab a little permanent yellow deep, and I'm just pulling these trees. You can see I'm overlapping a little bit, so I have kind of a jaggedy edge there. Maybe I'm going to add just a skosh red. I'm going to use Scarlet Lake, but it's a pretty good red. So I'm just going to add a little of that down in here in some spots. You can see I'm leaving areas of the paper. And I'm just pull that across. And then those trees kind of peter out over there somewhere. Like that, maybe. These will come in. Maybe I want a little more of this yellow over here where I have less blue. And what I may do is, even though I drew those trees, I feel like they got a little low right there, and I needed another little, it was just kind of a straight line following along the top of that little hill, field or whatever. So I'll just I just made that one taller. Let me grab a little, that's what I want, a little orange. We'll just kind of plop a little of that in there. Let's go back to permanent yellow deep. We'll kind of do that. Now, these will kind of be sharp lines for now, but we'll go back in and soften some of them. You know, I kind of feel like maybe these trees need to be a little taller over here too, just to kind of act as a little buffer. You know, your eye might come in like this and then want to come all the way out. So I think if I make those a little taller over here, they'll start to kick people up into the clouds, which is kind of where we want to, you know, this is all about getting people up into here. So just really quick and simple. And don't worry if yours don't look like, I'm not super happy with this red. I may have gotten too much in there. Don't worry about, you know, if yours doesn't look quite like this. I'm not even sure I like this yet. So, you know, every painting, I know I probably say this a lot, but every painting goes through a difficult period where you're like, man, this is terrible. And it's, you know, it's like a teenager. It's those angry teenage years. And then once things start to come together, suddenly, you know, you're going off to college and and they like you again. I don't I don't know. But you know, it's or maybe it's the difficult twos or something. They're kind of all going through that kind of, every painting will have that little bit of difficult where you're like,
I like this.
yeah.
anymore.
So just keep you know, going. Now there is a point where you're going to want to stop. Like I'm kind of futzing with this, and I need to stop and let this dry. And all this is just a little tree, you know, kind of, maybe that tree needs to be a little bit bigger too. You know, these are just some trees off in the distance. Maybe there's a stream or something over there or something. It doesn't really matter. They're just kind of back there as a mid ground. Yeah, I think I got a little bit too much paint right there, so I'm just going to come in and pick that up.
The tree should actually be sitting on the part we just.
They should, yeah. You kind of want to overlap a little bit of the bottom of the trees onto your yeah, that field kind of thing. And don't worry if it, you know, I've got a little spot here where it's kind of run down way into this. That's okay. I can fix that later, or it may turn out looking okay, and I like it. Who knows? All right. So once you're kind of happy with that, and even if you're not, I mean, there are things that we can do to kind of fix things. So don't stress too much. What we're going to do now is we're going to lay in these bluffs. We have enough of the foreground kind of painted that we can deal with these bluffs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a really nice dark Well, I need a whole lot more water than that. So let's do it with a bigger brush. Get some actual water in there. All right, there we go. So I've got, this is royal blue, but any dark blue, you know, if you have cobalt blue, if you have Prussian blue, if you have ultramarine blue, just your darkest blue. Actually, this isn't even my darkest blue, but then I'm going to take some Hooker's green, and again, just a dark green. Just a touch more of the blue. And then I'm going to grab my quinacridone violet, so any, you know, kind of purple, so you can see. Now, right now, it's a little on the violet side. You can see quite a bit of violet. If I wanted a little more on the blue side, I can pull in a little more blue. So now it's a little bluer. But basically, I'm making just a nice dark. Let's see, that's still kind of little more. Yeah, so I've got a, now in this case, I'm going to use a fair amount of paint, but I'm still also using mostly water. So if I go, you know, you can see like it's really not that dark. It looks dark on the palette, but if I kind of brush across, that's kind of what it looks like. So it's going to take a fair amount of both to kind of, but I want to kind of lead with this. So this one is, in my mind, this bluff is closer because that one kind of feels like it's further away. The way I drew it, it's a little shorter, so it feels a little further away. So I want to start off this side with this dark, and I'm just going to do kind of a silhouette kind of thing. I didn't really like that little pointy bit, so I'm going to kind of make it like a little, and I'm just, so it's pretty dark. And I want it to be pretty dark. I can make it darker if I don't feel like it's dark enough. Right now, I'm kind of liking where it's at. I want to make sure that I keep using a fair amount of water because otherwise lines will form. So as we get down towards trees, like I'll come in and kind of go, oh, well, I'm going to resculpt this tree. Basically, I'm going to make that bit of tree a little bit brighter because that's that side of the, so I'm leaving some of that white of the paper, which actually is blue, but it doesn't look blue now because it's against this nice dark. Now, some of you guys may have a slightly darker blue than I do, and that's okay. Don't stress about it too much. So let me pull some more of that across. And maybe I'll pull that down in there a little bit more. Maybe this is gonna come up. And so I can change the shape of my trees just by changing the, now that may be a little bit too much, but that's all right. Maybe over here it comes back into that. You know, I can come up, I can paint down over part of the paint that I've already put in there. I'm still trying to keep this fairly damp. I don't want anything to kind of form yet. And I want this fairly dark because it's kind of a silhouette back there. This is a stormy sky that, you know, is in shadow from clouds and stuff. So I want it to be fairly dark. But this is, you know, if you're not happy with how the top of your trees look, this is where you can kind of come in and go, okay, well, I can change this up a little bit. I'm gonna pull that down maybe a little lower. So those trees are not quite as tall as I had them. And you know, these are a little taller in some spots. I don't know if I like that shape, so I'm just gonna, there, that's a little more interesting shape. I'm trying not to paint perfectly round, you know, trees or where, I mean, it still happens. But, you know, I'm not trying to paint anything uniform, so I have different shapes, different sizes. Maybe that comes down into there. I think I'm going to change this shape there. This comes down. And even though it kind of looks like I'm painting a lot with the tip of my brush, and I am to some extent, I'm also painting with the side, you know, I'm moving my brush across so that it's more of a, you know, I'm getting a bigger stroke because I'm pushing the brush down. So maybe this, I feel like this needs to come out more into there. Like I didn't draw it quite the way I envisioned it, I think. So
it's okay for this to leach into the yellow down here.
It is, but you notice I dried that, so it's 100% dry. So even though I'm covering some of that yellow, you'll see that it's not running into it because it's not wet.
Okay.
So I'm getting a nice clean edge. Now I want this to be similar to this. Let me just kind of. See if I like maybe that. There we go. But I want it to be a little bit lighter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little more of my quinacridone violet. And I'm going to make kind of a violet gray over here. You can see it's not quite the same. And I'm going to use way more water. So I just added a little more violet to that. It's not going to be quite as dark. I mean, it looks dark right there, but when I start spreading it out, you'll see that it's not anywhere near as dark as that. And that's because it's further away, so we're getting that atmospheric perspective because it's, in this case, you know, sometimes darker things push lighter things forward. So like these trees are being pushed forward by that dark of this. This is darker than these trees too, but it's lighter than that, so it pushes it back even further. So you know that it's further away because it's, let's pull that down. I don't know if I like that shape that I created, so we'll just make it come down even more. But you can also see that I'm, you know, I can, now these pencil lines won't go away because they're behind that yellow, but that's okay. But you can see that, you know, they're starting to kind of disappear as I put in these darker colors. The pencil lines kind of, they're there, you know, if I look for them, I can still see them, but they're less noticeable as we start adding these other colors. You know, I don't know, I can pull this down and cover up some of that. Maybe this comes back up into there. I don't mind that. But you can use this darker color to hide some of your pencil lines, or what do model builders in the movie industry call it, hiding your crimes. Yeah, when you use something to cover up something else.
Hiding your what?
Hiding your crimes.
Oh.
That's what model builders and, you know, like prop builders and stuff call it. I watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Maybe that needs to come out like so. But you can see it's darker, so it's pushed these forward, but at the same time, it's much lighter than that one. And so it, and if I feel like it's too light, I can come back in later and add another little bit to it. If I don't feel like that's dark enough, I can add more. But I feel like it's darker than, you know, it's close to where I want it. So, but I can always go darker. little harder to go lighter, although I can go back in and lift some of that as well later after it's dry. But yeah, so that's what we're gonna do there.
Which colors did you use on that?
So I used royal blue, hooker's green, and quinacridone violet, but any, dark blue, green, and violet will get you something very similar to that.
Okay. What number is that?
This is a 6. Yeah, I'm just using, these are all little small shapes, so I'm using a fairly small brush. Just because it gives me a little more control. Well, let's do our first wash on our road. I think we'll be able to finish this up next week and probably start a new thing. But because we're not done. The reason I had you paint all this stuff is so we can go back into our sky and add some more dramatic storm stuff. But we needed kind of something in the foreground to do that. So I'm going to just do my first wash on the road, and then we'll tie in everything and the sky next week, I think. So for this is where your yellow ochre might come in handy. Later. I'm going to use some quinacridone gold. I'm going to use some burnt sienna. I think you have burnt sienna, or some sort of sienna in your set over there. I don't use yellow ochre anymore just because I like quinacridone gold better, but they're both. That's this one, but you can see it's a really pretty kind of.
Okay.
So it's very similar to yellow ochre. It's just a little more vibrant, I think. So that's why I switched to that. But yellow ochre is perfectly fine and lovely color. But I just happen to like the quinacridone gold a little bit more. It's just kind of got that. So I'm going to use a little of that. But I'm also going to pull in some of my color from my sky into here as well. So I'm going to have some peacock blue. So I'm going to start. This is quinacridone gold, but this is where you'd use yellow ochre.
Okay.
Yours will look a little bit different, but when you paint it out, it won't be quite that, but it'll be similar.
Okay.
I just replaced yellow ochre with quinacridone gold because I like it a little. I was just saying I like it a little better. That's the yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just come in, and I'm using my flat brush just because it lets me cover a lot, and you can see I'm sort of I'm making a stroke and following along those lines that I've got there. Let's see. I'm gonna grab a little of this peacock blue. Let's see. I should probably clean my brush out. There we go. And I'm just gonna put a little of that in there. Right now it looks a little wonky, but don't fret. I'm gonna put a little opera in there. That's a lot of color. You'll notice I just cleaned out my brush.
It's like there was a murder on the road.
Right.
I said that. It's like somebody just got murdered.
I'm coming back in with just a clean brush, and I'm kind of letting that pick up some of that excess.
It really faded out.
Yeah, just by adding more water. Let's see. I'm going to use a little burnt sienna as well. So that is more of a brown. So that's, you can see burnt sienna, it's brown. Grab a little of that and we'll come in. Because, this is a dirt road, so, or at least mine is. So I'm just.
Want a freeway.
There we go. And I'm just kind of, I got that a little higher than my line, but that's all right. So we'll just, let's see. little bit more of that right along here, and maybe just a hint of this peacock blue. Now that kind of blended into kind of a gray, and that's okay. But there we go. That's kind of, maybe I could even take some of this darker blue that I have and add it in a few spots, just while that's super wet. And then I can kind of, now, right now, this doesn't look like a whole lot of anything. But as we add more layers, and then we'll go in and we're going to add some lines that look like ruts and things, it'll start to flatten that out. Let me just, I want a little bit more peacock blue. Right up in there. And then maybe just a touch more of the opera in a couple spots. There. Yeah, and so that looks like a lot, and it is. It's too much. So I'll just go back in, I'll clean my brush out. Even just wiping it off like that, helps. And so, but you'll notice like over here, I'm moving my brush in this direction. I'm following that line, but then when I get over here, I'm following that line.
Okay.
So somewhere in between, you end up doing, kind of straight down. But these all, the closer you get to the edge of your road, that's the line you're going to follow. So there, I have my initial wash. I might just want just a skosh more burnt sienna, just in a couple of spots, just to say I did it. I don't want it too dark back there yet, but just a little bit. And there. So yeah, something like that. So this will be our first wash on our road. We'll finish this up, and then yeah. And I think we can finish this up next. I know we can. We'll finish this up next week. And so my road, my road looks like, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat kind of right now. And that's okay, because we'll tie it all in. Hey, how are you doing? We'll tie it all in with our next, layers and stuff. So I know it seems wacky, but
Those colors you did again?
I used quinacridone gold, or if you don't have that, yellow ochre. And then I used some peacock blue, and I used opera.
You don't have the peacock blue?
Just like cobalt blue or a light, kind of a light blue, whatever that first light, kind of blue that you used in your sky.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else did I used opera. You don't necessarily have to use opera. You could use like a violet or something in there if you don't have opera. But then I used burnt sienna as well. That's probably a little lighter than burnt sienna, but it should work. Yeah. Okay, so we left off doing these kind of dark kind of bluffs or mountains in the background last week. And so we want to work a little bit more on our foreground, and then we'll come back to the sky and really finish that up. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use, medium-sized round brush. I'm going to use my number 8 round. And I'm going to work on this foreground. Now, we don't need to put a lot of detail in this because it's not going to really be what's, the focal point. We're really going to be focusing on finishing up this sky and really making that a dramatic sky. So, but we do want to put, we want it more than this. Right now, this looks kind of flat. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of revisit this color palette that we laid down on this kind of, we'll call it a grassy hillside or field or whatever. But in some cases, we're going to use some slightly darker or less watered down versions of these colors. So I'm going to start with, I can see I have a little bit of green right here, and I think I'm going to start with that. So I'm going to grab a little Hooker's green, and I'm going to take that over, and here, I'll move this over so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. I've got Hooker's green here on my palette, and I am adding a lot of water, but and maybe a little green number 2. So kind of my dark green and my medium green. We'll see which one I go with. I know I'm going to be using a little bit of my permanent yellow orange, which is very similar to cadmium orange, if that's what you're using for your orange, or whatever darkest orange you have. I know I'm going to use a little of that, so I'm going to just get a nice little puddle of that going here. And then I know that I'm probably going to want some red. I'm going to use, I think I was using Scarlet Lake last time, so I'm going to continue with that, but you don't have to use Scarlet Lake. You can use, like any kind of red that you have. So I'm just going to put a little puddle of that Scarlet Lake right here. And maybe I'll grab a little quinacridone violet. Again, if you don't have quinacridone violet, just whatever kind of violet you have. So I'm just going to make a little puddle there. Make sure I've got plenty of water in all of these.
You want to water down?
Yeah, I'm just making a puddle of each one. So that they're kind of ready, and I just want to make sure that I have enough kind of there, because we kind of want to work a little fast. It doesn't have to be extremely fast, but we want a lot, we want some of these colors to run together, just like we did before. I might even throw a little peacock blue in there. So if you were whatever blue you were using, if it was peacock blue or cobalt blue or ultramarine blue or whatever, grab a little of that as well. So I'm just making, what do I have there? 6 puddles of different color, just so I'm kind of ready. And I know what I'm doing, or think I know what I'm doing. It could be at any time I'll go back and go, oh, well, I really want a little burnt sienna, which I actually think I will probably use a little burnt sienna possibly. So I'm going to grab a little puddle of that, which let's see if I can get, there we go. I'm just putting that here in this guy. So I got a little burnt sienna there and some quinacridone gold, which if you don't have quinacridone gold, yellow ochre is a good substitute for that. So there we go. So that ought to be plenty. I mean, I may or may not use all of these, or I may use others. It's just as we get going, we'll see. Oops. Okay, so I think because I started off looking at this green right here, I'm going to use a little bit of that. So I'm going to grab, and I think I'm going to, even though I have some Hooker's green, I think I'm going to go with my medium green, that green number 2. If you don't have a medium green, just water down Hooker's green quite a bit.
Should I go with the sap green?
You could use sap green, yeah. It's a little earthier, and that's fine. That's a good color. I like sap green. I have some sap green here too. I use that quite a bit. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to grab a little of that, and I'm going to come in, and I'm kind of thinking grassy shapes. I'm not really trying to paint grass, but I'm thinking grass-like shapes. So I'm going to come in and just kind of use the tip of my brush to add a little. In fact, I may have overloaded that. I may want to actually switch to a smaller, but I'm going to use my number 6 brush because I'm not getting the point that I want on that one. So I'm just going to kind of, and I know that maybe doesn't look like a grass shape, but once I've put that color down, it's very similar to what we've done everywhere else. I'm going to just come back in with a completely clean brush that's a little bit dry, and I'm going to pick up some of this. So it just becomes kind of this shape that mimics grass. So I might put some little tick marks in there, and then we'll come in and let's use a little. I'm gonna grab a little of my quinacridone violet over here and put a little of that in here. Now, see, that's really dark, and I don't want it quite that dark, but it's okay to put it down that dark because we'll come back in and you'll see it's just really just putting down little tick marks. Mostly I'm using the point of my brush to put the paint down, and then when I want to pick it up, I can come back in and just grab some of that like that. And then I want this to run into that a little bit, so we get a little, there we go. I'll just force that with a little water. But you can see I'm just basically creating texture with the point and the side of my brush.
Well, in real life, you got green here. What would this violet be?
That could be drier grass that's kind of, seed pods that have kind of got, grass that's gone to seed. Right. They get that purpley tint, especially what is it, cheatgrass or something. It could be something like that. Who knows? It's really just for interest, but that's what it would be. It'd be, okay. It could even be, like flower blossoms that are kind of, when you're looking at a field that's kind of far away. Siri, I don't need your help. Those colors, they're made up of a bunch of individual little tiny yellow or orange or whatever color flowers. But when you're looking at it, it's just a big field of, a big splotch of color. Yeah. So that's really what we're doing here. So let me grab a little of this orange. We'll put a little orange in, and it can be flowers, it can be dry grass, it's whatever. And the great thing is, it's whatever the person viewing your painting thinks it is. Yeah, it's what they think. It could be whatever you intended it to be, but it also is what they and that's what is so great about kind of painting in a somewhat impressionistic style, is the viewer gets to tell part of the story, and they become an active participant in the let's go with a little red over here. They become an active participant in the whole thing, and it makes it more interesting for them, and I don't know, I think just more fun. I like to, but you can see it's really not you know, I'm not sitting here going, well, there's this blade of grass and there's that blade of grass and there's that. You know, every now and then I might throw in something if I was putting some detail in the foreground or something. I would.
Here, could you go back and put some red around here?
Oh yeah, for sure. I could come in here and maybe I want to add a little red to that. So it's got.
So it's not all, you know, this area is green or purple or whatever.
No, yeah. I'm just putting color down right now. Maybe I want a little more red down in here as well to kind of blend into that orange. What I can do is add water. Now, another cool thing, if you have one of these spray bottles, thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. With the, you know, they have this little arrow with the dot behind them. And I've talked, you guys have seen me talk about these who've taken the class before. These have a varied dot pattern. They're not a fine mist sprayer. If I spray those down on here, I can get, so I've got some water there. You can see it. I can come back in and add a little color to that. Or I can put a little color down and spray it. But that water helps those colors blend. And you see that I got a nice little pattern there. Because that water's on there. That brand, you know, don't order the whole bean ones. I do have if you have my supply list, the whole bean doesn't make this nozzle top anymore. And I have two sources for water bottles that have the right nozzle top.
Okay.
I need to get that from you.
Yeah,
It's on that list that you gave us. You registered?
Yeah, it should be on that. So if you don't have one, I can email it to you. So here I'm just kind of moving some paint, but I'm creating more texture. I have that base color down, and now I'm creating more texture on top. Let's come in with a little darker green, maybe down in here. Maybe this is a little bit healthier grass or something. I don't know. And all it is I just put a little color down and then I come back in and pick some of it up. And it makes, I'm using the side of my brush. I'm kind of rolling the brush. I'm moving it around. You know, I will occasionally have just a little streak of, you know, I'll do something like that. But, you know, this foreground isn't going to have a whole lot of, let's use a little peacock blue down in here. I know I had some of that, so we'll just kind of bring that down in here. And I'm just basically moving paint around and creating another layer of color on top of this. And don't worry about the fact that, you know, like I've got a weird line, kind of, you know, this whole thing with the trees is weird. I'm going to come back in with some darker shadows on the bottom of that to kind of.
Is that how you cover up your pencil lines?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do with your hand?
Oh, I had surgery yesterday.
Oh.
wow.
I had, I fell earlier in the summer, and after it was all healed, they found some things that needed to be surgically fixed.
Oh dear.
Oh, geez.
So they had to break it again?
No, the wrist has 7 bones, and the ligaments tore between a couple of those bones, and so they had to use like a vice grips or something.
Oh my.
And he showed me pictures of this kind of big pliers pulling the bones together. So,
Ouch,
Gosh.
ouch.
That doesn't sound
I
fun.
wasn't awake.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Better you than me.
Yeah, I'm right-handed. Yeah, exactly. I'm just supposed to keep it elevated, so.
Hmm.
So, yeah, here I'm using, you know, the fine point of this brush and just kind of painting a little scribbly line in there, and I'll just keep moving this around. If I want, I can come back in and spritz that a little. which is fun, which you guys can borrow this, by the way. We can just, it's just water, so we can fill it back up and
So we're not really drawing anything.
we're just making texture.
Okay.
Let's see. This is
So
there.
so for this, there's no right or wrong. It's
There,
just already on the
that's
board.
the exactly, yeah, there isn't a right or wrong. That's the great thing about it. It's just kind of creating a texture and creating, this color pattern. See how that now that peacock blue kind of blends in with the orange there and makes kind of an interesting green. Here's sap green. This is a little earthier green, you can see. And right now this looks like a hodgepodge quilt kind of weird thing, but as we keep going, as we keep adding layers, see, I'll just add a little into that place where it's really wet and let that kind of run. And you would think, oh, sap green and orange next to each other would be weird, but we'll end up getting these interesting mix, because I'm letting that run into the orange on its own. Maybe we'll come down here with a little darker. And again, this is, right now, I'm not totally sure how this is going to turn out. It's that part of the painting where it's, I could go either way, whether I like it or not. But that's all right, because I'm having fun. And I'll put some shadows across here, and that will, that'll end up hiding a few things as well. So like these lines that are kind of weird, maybe. But here you can see, and if I feel like maybe it needs to blend a little more, maybe it's a little too divided, I can add more water. Even though that's dry, I can come back in and add more water and get it to blend in together and make interesting texture. So maybe I'll soften that edge. I had a whole lot of hard edges there. Maybe I need a few softer edges. And then we'll just kind of let's see, I was using sap green over here, so maybe I'll continue to use that kind of over in here. Yeah, so, and I'm going to do the same over here. I'm just going to, I probably should have started over here. I don't know why I do this all the time. I actually, before I do that, I kind of want this to be a little bit lighter back up in here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this orange. Just to give it a little bit of a glow back there, and really want to use this permanent yellow deep because it's got a bit of a kind of a glow. I'm going to add back up in there as well. So anytime I want something to kind of look like lights hitting it, I'll add a little of that. And that looks like a bit of a mess right now, but that's all right.
What was that yellow that you used?
Permanent yellow deep.
Okay.
It's a Holbein color, and that's it. But any sorry, I got an itchy nose. I may have a dog hair in my mask or something. What was any kind of, if you can kind of find a like a deep orange or deep yellow color, orangey yellow, I guess. Okay. And so, yeah, I'll do this other side here. And you guys can give this a try, but yeah, there is no right or wrong really with this. It's just where you get too many, if you get too many hard edges, just go back in with a little water and soften up some of them. And also if it gets too dark, we can do some lifting later once it's dry. I'll show you guys that too. Let's see. Did have a dog hair stuck in my mask. Yep.
Their hair stuck in the belly button. I'm going, oh my heck. That ever happened.
Right, yeah. But remember to try and keep it a little on the light side. We want it a little darker than what it was, but not real dark yet, because we are going to add some shadows to this, some cast shadows from either clouds or trees or something. So don't let it get too dark, but you want it just a wee bit darker than. And feel free, let some of that lighter area that you had, let some of that stay there, and don't feel the need to cover every little bit. It's okay to have little areas of that lighter stuff showing through. May even use a little. Okay, so let's that's dry enough, I think. Let's do a little bit on this. I'm going to start with the trees, and then I'm going to also do a little bit of work in the road, and then we should be ready to jump back on the sky and kind of finish that up, hopefully. So right now, I mean, if we look at this, well, that's the wrong way. That's even worse. Had it balanced perfect, and now, let's see. There we go. Yeah. There we go. You know, the trees are kind of getting lost in with the you know the meadow. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. And so we want to distinguish those a little bit and help push them back behind these little, you know, hills or little rises in the excuse me, in the foreground. So I'm going to grab a little. I'm going to use a little bit of. Actually, I think I'm just going to use some quinacridone violet. So whatever violet you have, you know, not super purple, but kind of a red violet. I may actually mix it with just a bit of blue to give myself a slightly darker. So I'm going to mix in a little. Oh, let's bring this over here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to mix in a little bit of, and that may be a little too much, so I'll just add some more violet, quinacridone violet. I want it still to be fairly, you know, fairly purple or red, kind of a violet. I just want it slightly darker than the quinacridone violet, which is a little bit lighter, but I still want it on the violet side of purple. So you kind of see, yeah, that's pretty close. So that's what I've got there. So I'm then going to come back over here and I'm going to add some kind of dark areas and I'm going to add some pretty dark areas, and then I'm going to lighten some of them back up a little bit. So, so I'm just going to, I'm going to start here and work my way that way because that would be because I'm right-handed, and that makes sense. Unlike the last two times when I've gone the other direction. So I'm just going to kind of come in here. I'm using this because this is so little. I'm using this my small number 6 round. And I may have had a little bit too much in my brush. So I put a little paint down and then I clean my brush out. Now I'm just moving some of that paint around with just water. Now, obviously, because I've stuck the brush back in these little blobs of paint on my, or little puddles of paint on my paper. They, you know, I've picked up more paint on the brush, but you understand what I'm saying. I don't know why I'm probably over explaining that. But basically I'm just kind of moving through here. And because these are so far away, I don't have to do a lot of detail on, you know, trunks and branches and things like that. I'm just basically adding just a wee bit of a suggestion of kind of dark underbrush and trunks of these trees. You know, cottonwoods always have that kind of dark, you know, bark, in contrast to when they've turned yellow. You know, their bark looks almost black sometimes. Maybe these are cottonwoods, maybe they're not, who knows, but that's really all I'm doing here is just kind of, and you can see they're really just a series of little tick marks that I've made in different shapes, to kind of, you know, and I may even bring, like that was probably a little too much, but that's all right. If I feel at any time that, you know, I don't like something, I can come back in and that just becomes a little shadow area on the tree. So really that's all I'm doing is just kind of coming in and doing little bits of, and I'm kind of keeping things, you know, connected a little bit. I mean, it's breaking up, but it's also somewhat connected. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, I mean, this whole kind of thing is connected, but then I'll have little areas where it's broken apart here where I don't think maybe it's dark enough. I can add a little bit more, but you can see how it starts to push that back in space because there's this little bit of dark. I can come back in where now that this is starting to dry over here, I don't want that quite a sharp a line right next to the edge of my paper. So now that that's dried up right there, I can come back in with a little water and just soften that edge right here. And then just pick some of that back up. So it then gets really fuzzy as we get closer to the edge of the paper, and people don't follow, you know, they're less likely to follow that line off of the paper. I mean, I'll do some other things, you know, there's other things I can do to sort of soften this, you know, I can soften this edge too, just by hitting that a little bit right there. And that just softens that whole bit. And so maybe I'll use a little over here in the middle, I might use a little royal blue and Hooker's green mixed together with just a bit of this. So it starts to be a little bit more in the blue, you know, and it gets a little darker maybe right in here in the kind of towards this area where I'm really trying to direct you up into here. Just a little bit, but it's a color change. So just by adding a little bit of green and blue to the mix, you know, I grabbed a little of this violet and threw it in here, but it's mostly green and blue, the Hooker's green and the royal blue, but you know, it could be sap green and whatever dark blue you have. But you can see I'm just kind of putting little things that look like they could be suggestions of trunks and branches and things and underbrush shadows and things like that. I can go back in and add a little bit more slightly darker oranges to this later to help kind of add volume to that, but I don't need a lot of volume because they're so far away. So this is just going to kind of come up in there. And if at any time I think that's too dark, I can come in and with a thirsty brush. I don't think I squeezed out enough. And I can pick some of that up So it's not quite as dark in all those spots. So I'm just squeezing the water and the paint out. Maybe I'll just kind of change the shape of that there and pick up a little more. But yeah, so that's kind of lightened that up, and I'm just going to continue this. Maybe we'll go back to a little bit of the violet over here. I want to continue this around here, and it just, you can also see that I'm doing an uneven edge. You know, I'm not drawing a straight line, so it looks like the grass is coming up in front of, you know, because of this little rise.
I just got purple on your toilet paper.
Oh, that's all right.
I thought that could be disastrous.
He likes to spread his paint around.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's just soften that edge. That makes it a little bit of a shadow on the edge of that tree. We'll just pick up some of that. There we go. Maybe we'll move into a little bit more green. Like a blue green instead of a green blue. I don't know. Just a slightly darker green. We'll use that as we'll get that to kind of run together a little bit too. So it, and like here, these just, I'm almost just kind of putting little tick marks because there's not a lot of the tree visible off the, you know, in front of that or behind that hill. So it's just a little bit of.
So you're kind of going on your pencil line.
I am. I'm using it to kind of disguise that, so it's even less noticeable. That's exactly what I'm doing. And so even like right there, that little curvy pencil line might be visible forever, but people are less likely to notice it because there's this dark kind of paint, you know, color next to it that kind of hides it a little bit. So even if you don't completely paint over that line, let's just pick up some of this. You still disguise it and hide it. Let's go back to this kind of blue, maybe some of the violet. And I don't want a lot of detail over here, so I'm kind of, that looks a little repetitive, so let me just change that shape up. So as I get over here, I'm just going to soften that whole thing up and soften down here as well. Just so it's a little blurrier. Maybe that's got a little bit of a, I didn't really care for the shape that happened there. It's the way that, so we'll just kind of, so that's kind of what I'm doing with the trees. And then real quickly, I'll show you what because all that really is just putting little tick marks in. You know, just coming in with the point of my brush for the most part. Every now and then I might come in and soften some areas where I don't want it to be completely, you know, I kind of like that little fuzzy look. It helps look like, and in the way I look at it, when it's fuzzy, that looks like a whole bunch of little seed pods or something. You know how it gets that kind of lacy, fuzzy look. So if you come back in after it dries a little bit and lift back up, you get that kind of white glow coming through the, like right there. So, and it softens that whole thing and you get kind of that fuzzy, you know, atmospheric perspective. That took a lot
That
of
was
energy.
Yeah.
mouthful.
Took a lot of energy to get that out of my head.
Do it again. Do
Yeah.
it again.
But it's the same principle as this being slightly lighter than this. It looks further back, even though it's lighter, it's still a dark. And value wise, it's probably actually equal to this, but because it's that darker kind of purple, but lighter than this, it feels like it's further back because there's a lot of atmosphere in between you and that object. Nowadays, we would say, well, it's hazy from the forest fires.
Right.
So let's pick up, soften just a bit of that. I don't want it all softened, but maybe I did a little too much, so we'll just come back in. The cool thing is that's a little wet, so it'll kind of get fuzzy as well. The road. So with the road, I know I'm going to use a little, I'm going to start off, I'm going to use a little burnt sienna. I know I'm going to use a little quinacridone. Whoa, I just jumped right out of my hand. I'm going to use a little quinacridone gold, so I'm just going to re-wet this puddle that I made from earlier, because I don't think I ended up using either of those. And I'm going to start, I think I'm going to start with quinacridone gold. Now, again, if you don't have quinacridone gold, yellow ochre is a good substitute. And I'm just going to come in and kind of make some brush strokes that kind of follow this curve, and then over here I'm going to make brush strokes that follow that curve. And I'm just kind of putting in, you can see I'm kind of pushing and pulling my brush to make those, but you'll back, either this way or pushing it. And I'm using both the tip and the side of my brush. So I've did, and by doing that, that starts to flatten that plane. Maybe I'll grab a little opera over here. Let's make sure I get my brush cleaned out well enough. And I'm just gonna kind of do the same thing. I'll pull that in and let that bleed into each other just by adding a little bit of that color next to it. Now, I may have let that dry too much right there. I was talking too much, but that's all right. I'll just re-wet it. And if you get something put down and you're like, well, I don't know if I care for that, that's okay. Just add a little more paint and see what happens. So I'm going to add a little. I know I am going to get to that burnt sienna here in a second, but I'm going to use a little of the permanent orange or permanent yellow orange. There I kind of dry brush, so that gave me a little bit different texture. So really the brush isn't that dry, but what I've done is I've just kind of pulled it across the paper, and it picks up the texture of the paper just by kind of doing that with it. And it gives me just an interesting kind of rough texture, being a road. So let's come in with a little of this burnt sienna, which is a darker color. And I just want to kind of pull, that kind of defines that edge a little bit without really drawing a line. I'm painting a shape. You can see it's not, I didn't come in and just paint a line like that. I use I press down and use the side of the brush a little bit more. Same with over here. So we'll just kind of pull some of that. And all I'm doing is just kind of, let's get some of this in there. I'm creating texture, but in this case, it's kind of a linear texture that moves back in space. So it's smaller up here, it's thicker and fatter up back here. And then once I'm done with this, I'll go in and I'll add actually little streaks of, that look like ruts. Let's see, I could even grab a little of this peacock blue. I used that a little bit before. And it sometimes looks makes it look like maybe there's a puddle or something. Not that that's necessarily what I'm going for, but if somebody thinks it's a puddle, then
Yeah, we're in
So
the
we-
desert.
that's okay. Well, yeah, you know, maybe it rained, you know,
Yeah,
this storm
those
was,
clouds.
yeah. So just adding a little color. Let's go back to a little, well, let's grab a little of this, I think, first. I still want to kind of, there we go. And again, I don't worry too much if this looks a little weird, because I can come back in and soften that. I don't really like that line that I put there, maybe so I can soften that. And it ends up blending into that grass some more. If I don't like the fact that all these are hard lines, I can come back in and soften that as well. Even if it's 100% dry, I can come back in and soften that up a bit. But that's really all I'm doing is just kind of playing around with color and texture. Here where I was kind of making less linear, you know, more kind of globular shapes, I guess. These are all going to be mostly linear, kind of either following this curve or as I get a little, you know, they'll sort of flatten out and get a little straighter here, even though that's not really a line. It's starting to get this kind of directional thing going on. And then as I get over here, it starts to flatten out this way. Let me grab just, yeah, there we go. Throw a little more of that in there. Maybe just a bit of this violet that I was using over here. I'll end up painting shadows on here, but it's okay to have a little bit of dark. Now I'm going to grab the opera and just add a little of that as well in there, just to kind of break up that color. But you can see, even though that's a dark color, by adding a lot of water and then the opera, I allow that to lighten up, and it's little areas of contrast, but still, this is all mostly one value, and we'll fix that with shadows and stuff. So that's
So the shadows, you have the lines now. You've
Yeah.
got the lines and all that. So when you bring the shadows back in, it's gonna take those lines out?
No, well, yes and no. You know, the shadow is going to just be kind of large, kind of blob shapes that,
Yeah.
you know, horizontal shapes that come across this way. And those will be either visible through there because it's transparent, or I'll come back in and add more.
Okay.
That will be visible, but it won't be quite as punched out. You know, it won't be quite as vibrant under those shadows. It'll still be there, and it'll be less visible. You know, people won't recognize that it's there, but they'll subconsciously know it's there, and that's what adds that interest. That adds that textural interest to the painting. But now you can see that I've kind of flat just by, you know, I mean, this isn't even a linear shape right there. I mean, it has some linear motion to it, but mostly, you know, these out here are kind of linear, but again, they're not that, you know, it's not like a bunch of straight lines. It's just shapes that generally follow these curves. But that helps flatten that road out. And then once we put in some more ruts later, it'll really flatten out.
So we're gonna put ruts into the roads, huh?
We are.
Just like the nation, right? Oh,
Yep. Not fun to drive on, but fun to paint. The cool thing about this is all these kind of strokes that I'm making are basically variations on a theme. You know, they're almost the same just slightly different in execution. There we go. That was the word I was looking for.
What was it?
Execution. They're all basically the same technique. It's just slightly different. They're applied slightly different, so they're executed slightly different from each other to get different results, but they're all very similar in the way they work. All right, so once everybody's kind of at a stopping point, we'll kind of work on this. I'll show you kind of more of this. We'll kind of finish up this sky, and then we'll do the shadows.
You said we're gonna do something with sky?
Yeah, I'm gonna make this look more stormy and more dramatic.
Okay.
So I also want to pull these clouds forward a little bit more, so I don't want them to feel like they're way back in there. So by doing well, let's see, I've got these. I sort of started doing a little rain right there. It's not really that clear, but I just know it's going in that direction, so I need to do the same over here, because it wouldn't be, I mean, it might, but it might look weird. In real life, it can do that, but so by pulling some of that rain down over this and lifting some of this back out and fuzzing that, making that a little more blurry, that'll help these clouds move forward, which seems weird, but but to start, I want to kind of start getting some of these darks really in there a little more dark. So I think I'm going to use a little indigo, because that's what I use there. But I don't want quite that much indigo, and I'm going to use, well, that's not what I was doing. I want to use a little Hooker's green as well, because I want just a wee bit, see how that's got kind of a green tint to it. So I'm going to take this indigo and sort of fuse in a little bit of the green. I need a little more. If you don't have any, and if you don't have indigo, don't worry about it. You can use royal blue, whatever blue you have. See, now I got it a little more. And I know this looks like a lot. I'm not going to use all of that, and I'm going to water it down quite a bit, because that's really, really dark. But I want it to just have a little bit of a green tint, kind of give it that stormy kind of feel. Green, I don't know, green clouds kind of have that. So I'm going to start thinking about where I want the body. I didn't really do a lot in here. I want to maybe push this portion of clouds back, and this is the portion of clouds that I want to push forward. So to begin with, I'm going to come in with just a wee bit more dark. Now that looks like a whole slew of dark. Don't panic. It is too much.
I won't panic on yours. On mine,
Yeah.
panic.
Well, when you're painting, I think I'm going to switch back to the smaller brush. It's just, I can get a better point. That one may be time to retire and pull out a new one. But you can see, I'm just going to pick some of that back up. So I put a lot, but there was a lot of water in there. So you can see that that lightens up quite a bit. And I can still go back in and add a bit of dark where I want to. And then come back in and just kind of clean my brush and then roll that back out and soften that underside, kind of gets it to look like it's, but you can see it's starting to push that forward. And then I can come in, I've got a hint of this dark that I put there, accident. I'm pretty sure I did that on accident, without really planning it, but I like how that happened. So some of this stuff is, the way this happens is just good fortune and luck, or the knowledge to go, well, this might turn into something, and then let it stay there without going, ah.
I'm sure it's the knowledge part.
So, well, there's a certain amount of luck sometimes. So I've got that pretty dark right there. I obviously don't want it that dark, but I just want to kind of build up that shape a little bit and start defining that. But you'll see that I'm not gonna connect these two because I want the viewer to make that connection for themselves. I may have, this dark can come over here, but like this really light, but I'm not going to connect the two super darks. So there is a little bit of dark connecting, but not very much. And that's just because I'm moving, I'm kind of blurring these bits out. I don't like that shape. So I just want to add a little more water and get that to kind of do its thing. But so now I've got this sort of interesting shaped cloud right here that's in front of this interesting shaped cloud right there. Very similar to what I've got going on over here. Let me just, I don't like that pointy shape right there. So I'm just gonna get rid of that entirely by adding a little water. And we'll separate this, but with a little bit lighter. I want this to be in front of that as well. So I'm just going to kind of pull. All I'm doing is just pull it using water to pull a little bit of that paint down. So it's a little darker, but it's not a real sharp line. And now the real fun part is coming down in here, figuring out, okay, well, I think this is going to be kind of the bottom of this cloud. It's going to kind of come in like so.
Nice big smile.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and so we'll bring that in like that. Just adding a little bottom to this cloud. Let's soften that right there. And then I want to start pulling this, and I'm just going to hint at this rain right now, but then as I get down in here, I'll show you real quick what I'm going to do. This I probably wouldn't do it this soon, but I'm going to just let that sit for a second, and then it completely lifts that out. So now I have, it's a little dark right here. I can even use a little paint. We'll just pull some of that. But now this is going to push this cloud even further forward as I start to do things like that. So I'm kind of hinting at it here. But then I can come down and really soften this. That line will never totally disappear, which I want. I want that to be there so it looks like. Now in this case, I don't necessarily want it that sharp of light, but we'll just kind of come in and pull that down. But that's a week old, so you can, all I'm doing is just kind of lifting back out. Now I don't want weird shapes in this, so I'm just going to kind of move this water around. But you can see that's going to start looking like a cloud burst in front of. Now I got to be careful here because I let that dry. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. Same with here. So you have to kind of keep track of a lot of moving parts when you're doing this. The nice thing is, in general, even if you let something dry, you're going to be able to soften it for the most part and get it to kind of wash out a little bit. So we'll just pick some of that up. Back in with a little more color right there. That was a little too much. But you can see it's starting to, and I can use my rag to pick it up as well. I just kind of wanted to show you how cool it was when you wipe it like that and it picks it up. And then if it's too white, I can just come back in. I can move a little bit more of this around and soften that back up. Same with up here. As that dries, I can add a little more rain there. Maybe soften this. I'm not sure I like that right there. So just kind of pull that up into more of this. Here I'm kind of dry brushing and adding texture to this cloud. All I did was my brush was somewhat damp, and I came up here, softened that, and then I used the paint that it picked up to add that little bit of texture right there. And if I feel like maybe this is too much, I can come back in and add a little more paint. Oops. I guess that's gonna have a little rise there now. But I can add a little more dark in here. I just have to be careful when I'm down in here. Kind of moving around these trees. Just darken this whole thing up a little bit more. Which is actually, I kind of like that. So that was a happy accident.
Mhm.
Where I was like, okay, well, I got a little too much, so I just added some. And now I can come back in and then I'll just carefully over here, I can soften that just like that. Just making it a little bit darker because, well, it's kind of a necessity, but I like how that's working out, being just a touch darker. Cat hair. It's from Patches. And I don't know that I like that shape. That was a little weird, so I'm just going to change it up a little bit. That's the nice thing. You can, when painting with darks and doing negative painting, you can change the shape of whatever it is in front of it. There. But you see how that's starting to look nice and fuzzy. So I want to come over here and just grab a little. I want this to be a little, and well, let me finish the thought. I want this to be a little darker. And I may come in and add a little more dark to that as well. But I'm going to come in and just kind of add more contrast to this lower portion of this cloud. Now that just looks like, what has he done? He's put this weird blob across there. But by coming back in with a clean brush and doing a little dry, well, not dry brushing, but just picking up some of that color and moving it around, I can now add kind of cloud texture. And you can see I'm using the side of my brush quite a bit. We'll pull some of this down and we'll switch to the point. But we'll just kind of get some of this to come
What
down.
brand is that brush?
This is Low Cornell, LOEW dash Cornell. They're really inexpensive brushes. Hobby Lobby used to carry them, but they don't anymore. Yeah, but this is their 70-20 round, and they come in, you know, all sorts of different sizes. But it's a great little brush. It's a synthetic brush, so it's not very expensive, but it's got good, you know, it lasts a long time. It keeps its point a long time.
I have a Princeton and it's already lost its point.
Oh, really?
I think.
Yeah, I really like this Holbein brush, but it's starting to lose its point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll buy in. Well, that one came free, so.
That was the one you really liked last year.
I did. I really like it, but it's not lasting as long as. Of course, I do have to cut them some slack because I am pretty hard on brushes, which is why I buy inexpensive brushes. I mean, they're not, you know, super cheap, but they're not, you know, I don't know, that $80
Yeah.
Kolinsky Sable that I have. But yeah, so I'm just adding a little more drama to this, really. I can even come in, maybe there's a little more dark. I don't want too much because I like this contrast here, but I want to add just a wee bit more of something going on.
It just, to me, it's so brave. to
Yes, I
just
agree.
slap
Yeah.
it down. It's like, oh man.
I look at this guy, it's like, I don't know, don't want to mess it up again.
Well, you know, this is an optional step. So if you don't want to do this step, it's okay. But I want to add a little, see, I want this contrast here with
Yeah.
the trees. I really want that little bit of trees to kind of pop
Right.
right there. So just by adding a little bit of dark down in there, maybe that needs to be spread out a little bit more. So just kind of moving that around. I still like that, you know, I want that contrast, but so I still have that by lightening
Right.
and, you know, that section. But then when I get back in here, I can keep that kind of. And I may want to add, because this sky is so blue up here, I may want to add a little bit of this darker blue mix, this green blue mix up into here as well, just to help.
Carries on.
Yeah, it kind of balances out that color. Now I don't want to totally cover up stuff, but so you can see as I start getting closer to my clouds and things, I'll soften that. But I can add a fair amount of dark back up in there. So let's go there. That may be a little too much green, so let's add a little more blue. And that's okay. There we go. So, and again, that looks like too much. It looks like I've ruined it. Don't panic. Just add more water.
Oh, I'm not panicking.
I take my towel to it.
Well, and here I could switch. I can switch back to this. I can switch back to this larger brush.
With me, I'd go, what the heck did I do?
Well, see, just add more water. I switched to that bigger brush. I don't want to lose, I really like that little cloud peeking out right there, so I don't want to lose that. So I need to be a little careful
Mhm.
there, but even like that dried kind of a bit right there, but just by adding some water, I also like this little bright little thing that's popping out there, so I don't want to ruin that either. So, and then just as it's drying, if you come back in and kind of pay attention to where those lines are forming that maybe you don't like straight lines. See, I don't really like that straight line that's forming there. I had one that was forming over here. Just come in and clean, wipe your brush off, clean it and wipe it, and then just kind of roll it, and it picks that up and kind of softens.
Wish I would remember that.
Softens.
Yeah.
To roll the brush, because it just doesn't.
Yeah,
doesn't
that
come
is
natural.
it's a great little trick that I don't know if I invented that. Probably not. I probably saw somebody do it and was like, oh, I'm not going to take credit for it, but I'll just add a little more this over in here just to make it a little more
Interesting.
a little more dramatic and interesting. And if you do end up screwing up, and even if you do, I mean, there's probably ways to fix it. But we're just practicing, so that's you just got to tell yourself, well, I'm just playing around, I'm just practicing.
But you can also wait until all this, next week or whatever, when this gets dry, go back in there and lighten it up a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So even if you overdo it and leave it, you can go back in. But you see how much more dramatic that's starting to look. And I still have that peacock blue underlayment or undercolor, whatever we want to call it.
It's a boiling sky now.
Yeah.
Looks like a storm.
Well, that's the goal for this one. So there's just a little hint of that. And then I'll show you, because we only have a little bit left, and I kind of want to start something new next week for you guys. So let me just.
Well, and the shadows will balance out the
Mhm.
stormy sky.
It will, yeah. So I'm just going to add a little bit more dark over here as well, not too much.
Now, where's the sun in all this?
Somewhere over here.
Okay, so it's shining back this way.
Mm-hmm. So, and we're gonna show that here now. By, let's see, I don't want that sharp line right there. Maybe I want to just soften, darken that edge a little bit. I can always grab a little cloud material, exactly, and soften it up that way.
I wish I could make that cloud
Yeah.
work for me.
Okay, so that's just added a little more drama to the sky, made it a little more. This is the only place in my life I like drama.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, if I really wanted to, I could do this kind of thing over here too. But for now, I'm not gonna do that. I do want to kind of fix that a little bit. Just a bit. There's a weird line there I didn't care for. Soften that line. Okay, so shadows. I want to use, I think I'm just going to use my round brush because it's a smaller painting. So basically, and you know, if you need to, you can go in and did I bring my pencil? There's a pencil. You can go in and kind of think, okay, well, I want to, I want a shadow. I know I kind of want a little bit of weight down here on the bottom. So in my foreground, I know I'm going to have a shadow that kind of comes across like this. I want to emphasize that curve, the shape of that little hill. And then this is going to come across, you know, something like that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll, yeah, somewhere like that. I don't want to go into the corner. So maybe I have a bit there, and then maybe there's another little bit that kind of comes down here, comes across the road. And you can see like I'm curving it here, but then when I get to the road, it's mostly straight. And then, you know, it'll maybe curve back up. So there's a bit of a, so it kind of, where did that come in? Right in there. So it kind of does that kind of thing. Maybe there's a little bit of a cloud shadow there or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But so, you know, or something down in here as well. So you don't necessarily have to draw those in. I just, you know, if it helps you kind of imagine where you want those shadows. And I want these to be fairly dark, but I also want them to be very colorful. So I'm going to, besides using things like violet and, you know, violet mixed with royal blue, which is a slightly darker violet. You know, I'll be using things like peacock blue, soften that puddle up. I'll probably use this or some of this green. And I will be using my opera just because, and I don't know if I washed that brush out very well, but that's all right. So I'm going to start off, I think, with a little of this violet over in here. And I'm gonna start with this shape up in here. And this will kind of also help hide that whatever is going on there that I don't like. So I'm just going to kind of put in a little violet. Move to this better pointed brush. Then I'm going to grab a little peacock blue. And just start this shadow, or start the blue away from and pull it up into that violet. And you can see I'm going to leave areas of color or of that background color. Maybe I'll drop in a little more. Maybe because that violet's so dark, I'm going to add a little opera just to offset that. See how that displaces the, I can come in with a little of that here as well. Maybe over here, I'll grab some of this Hooker's green and blue, indigo. We'll just pull that down into here. Pull a little bit more over in here as well. And if you don't like, if you don't like what you're doing, stop and reassess. I don't mind what I'm doing, but I'm trying to think if I like it. Sometimes I'll leave too much. I'll make these shapes too big, or there'll be too many of them in the same kind of general area. So I'll come back in and add either water or more paint and break them up, especially if they start to look the same. Let's go back into some of this peacock blue. There we go. We'll just kind of, and sometimes I'll just paint with the side of my brush. It's all right if, and let's come back in with that dark down in here in the corner. So that's that royal blue Hooker's green mix. And then as we get into the road, I want it to kind of be similar colors. So I'm going to grab a little burnt sienna and a little royal blue. And I'm going to make kind of a weird mud there for a bit. So I want some of that to be kind of this brown of the burnt sienna. And then that can bleed down into it. But then I'll come in with a little of this royal blue. Bring that across, and I don't know if I like that, so I want to change that shape up. Maybe it's too lint, too. What am I trying to say?
Compressed.
Yeah, it's too. It's the same thickness all the way around, and I don't want that. So I'm going to just pull some of this out, down. It's not whatever's casting the shadow. Let's go back to some violet here. Is not necessarily just one same, it's not going to be the same thickness. Maybe this comes down into that there more. I do, I want it to still feel kind of horizontal and flattened out, but not quite as much as it was. So let's switch back to this bigger brush. We'll come in with this violet, and here I can just, this shadow down in here, I can just kind of completely just paint that sideways across, and it'll be fine.
Covering up all that pretty road we made.
I know, but it'll still be visible under there. It'll be texture underneath this, and we'll add some more. That really, I should have just done that with this too. I think. Let's go back into this. We're gonna pick it back up here. Let's go back in, grab some of this opera. You can always, unless it's dry, you can always go in and add opera, and it'll displace the dark color, and you'll have these little pops of color. I don't know why you can do that. And what's funny about it is that even though opera is a super light color, it still will read like a shadow. So, which is kind of neat, I think. So let's just bring this shadow, and then it kind of peters out right there. Maybe there was another one kind of doing something up in here. And this one's not connected to anything necessarily. It's just there. It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to anything. It's just a dip where there's a shadow maybe, or who knows what's casting that. But you can see now I'm starting to get, let's pull in, I'm going to just pull in a little bit more down in here. Like there's a little bit back in there by those trees. that just kind of helps push those back a little bit. If I don't like that shape, I can just come in. And don't be afraid to just kind of experiment. But I can come in and just kind of change that shape a little bit. If I don't like it at all, I can lift it back out and it's now gone. That will be a little bit darker still, but that's okay. Yeah. All right, so do I like that? Let's just soften that up. I don't know. Let me dry it and I'll show you what we can now to kind of finish this off. We'll go back in. Yeah, that's dry. We'll go back in and we can. I'm just going to use a dark blue for some of these, and I'm going to add a few little ruts. And you can see I'm just kind of, I'm painting past where the edge of my paper is. A lot of times I'll sit here and I'll kind of practice in the air and then I'll make the mark, which that one was terrible. So I'm going to get rid of that because I wasn't really paying attention when I did that one. But so let's see, this one needs to kind of come in that. Okay, so, but I want some of these like here. I'm going to just paint on water on top of this. And maybe right in there, right here. I'm going to let that sit for a second. And then I'm going to take my rag. So now I have that lighter spot, which I can now go back in with some of this dark. I made it a little bit too big, but I can make it, I can thin it back up just by adding a little bit of paint to that. I can bring, maybe thicken this one up right there so it feels like, and then I can add a wee bit of a shadow to the inside of it next to it. So it's got a little bit of light hitting that. You can do the same right here. Just kind of lifting some of those back out to add that texture back in. Same with over here. Maybe I want to lift out part of that. And maybe that's, again, that may be too thick of a line now. That happens, but it's easy to go back in and just kind of thin it back down and add a little bit of a shadow. Maybe I can break it up into two bits. Maybe there's a little bit of a double rut where you get mud doing weird things. And so that's all. And again, if I don't like any of this, I can go back in and kind of change it. Maybe I make this whole thing. I mean, I've done that before where this all becomes one big shadow. I just need to, you don't make any rash decisions because I always sit there and look at it for a few days before I decide if I'm done.
Right.
But there, we'll just. But yeah, I don't know what that mark is right there. I don't like it. I don't remember making it, but I'm sure I did because it's there. That just was weird. I think I was painting a little bit of a shadow on the edge of this road, but it was just one big blob that I didn't care for. So maybe I've got a little bit of, that edge kind of. But you can hardly see any of the pencil lines. Those are almost entirely gone. Maybe I want a few of these ruts to be more earthy toned. That startled me. It's okay to have, ruts that kind of crisscross a little bit, because people drive weird on dirt roads. Some of these just come in and they're a little thicker. So, yeah. But that may be too much. So I can just pick just a wee bit of it up with my Kleenex, just, knock it back just a wee bit. If it's too dark, and now it's just a hint of that was there. So yeah, I think that's just kind of highlight that shape just a bit because I lost it right there. Just add a little. Yeah. It's starting to grow on me. Maybe I'll lift it.
How's your hand doing?
It's time for my hand to go home.
Is it? Yeah.
It's like it's getting swollen. It was getting swollen by the minute I was watching it. I'm going,
Good.
Oh,
Yeah.
getting bad.
So you want us to try that at home?
Yeah, you can try this at home if you want. And then if you want to bring them back next week, we'll look at them and then we'll also start a new painting
All right.
because we ran out of time.